Hello Reddit. I hope you don't mind if I share my story and seek some advice. My name is Andrew 42 and I've been dealing with a situation that's been eating away at me. It's about my family and how they've manipulated me over the years, especially when it comes to money. I feel like I've been done wrong by them, and I'm struggling to find a way out. Here's my story. For most of my life, I've been the go-to person in my family whenever there was a financial problem. It started innocently enough. My younger brother, David 38M, needed help with his college tuition. My parents were struggling at the time, and I had just started my own successful business, so I offered to cover the costs. It felt good to help, and David promised he'd pay me back once he graduated and got a job. David did graduate, and he did get a job, but the repayment never came. Instead, the requests for money increased. First, it was a small loan to help him get settled in his new apartment. Then, it was a car loan because his old one broke down. He always had a reason, and I always believed he would pay me back eventually. After all, he was my brother. My parents, too, often turned to me for financial assistance. They needed money for repairs on their house, then for medical bills. My father had health issues, and I couldn't stand the thought of them struggling. So, I helped them as well, always with the understanding that they would eventually find a way to repay me, or at least, that they genuinely needed the help. The years went by, and the requests continued. My sister, Emily 36F, joined the list. She had 2 kids and was going through a rough divorce. She needed help with legal fees, then with the mortgage payments on her house. Each time, I felt compelled to step in and help. I told myself it was what family did for each other. However, about a year ago, things started to change. I was going through a rough patch myself. My business hit some hard times, and I found myself needing to tighten the purse strings. It was then that I began to notice a pattern. Whenever I mentioned my own financial difficulties to my family, they seemed dismissive. My brother, who still hadn't repaid any of the loans, started avoiding my calls. My parents insisted they couldn't possibly pay me back because of ongoing medical expenses. My sister, despite having gotten back on her feet, claimed she was still struggling. I decided to do some digging. What I found shocked me. My brother had recently bought a new car, not a used one, but a brand new, expensive model. My parents had taken a vacation to Europe, something they never mentioned when they were pleading poverty. My sister had started a new business, something she had never discussed with me, even though I had been her primary source of support during her divorce. I felt betrayed. All those years, I had been sacrificing my own financial stability for them, and they hadn't been honest with me. They had taken advantage of my generosity, manipulating me with stories of hardship while they lived more comfortably than they let on. I confronted them about it. David was defensive, insisting he needed the car for work. My parents said the vacation was a gift from a friend, which seemed highly unlikely. Emily admitted she should have told me about her business but argued that she still needed help getting it off the ground. None of them seemed to grasp how much their actions hurt me. I realized I needed to make a change. I couldn't keep giving them money, especially not when they had been deceitful. I decided to cut them off financially, but it wasn't easy. They tried every trick in the book to get me to relent. They guilt-tripped me, accused me of being selfish, and even tried to involve extended family members to pressure me. Standing my ground has been tough. I've had to learn to say no and stick to it, despite the backlash. It's been a lonely journey, but I've found some support in friends who understand my situation. I've also started seeing a therapist to help me work through my feelings of guilt and betrayal. It's been a few months since I cut them off. They still occasionally try to manipulate me, but I'm getting better at recognizing their tactics. I've started focusing on rebuilding my own financial stability and setting boundaries with my family. I guess I'm sharing this because I want to know if anyone else has been in a similar situation. How did you handle it? How did you cope with the guilt and the backlash from your family? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening. Hello Reddit. It's been a while since my last post, and I wanted to give you all an update on my situation. To recap, my name is Andrew 42M, and I've been struggling with my family manipulating me for money over the years. Despite my efforts to set boundaries, things have taken an unexpected turn. After I cut my family off financially, I felt a sense of relief. For the first time in years, I could focus on my own financial stability and mental health. I was making progress, and I thought I had finally put an end to their manipulative behavior. Then, a few months ago, my brother David 38M reached out to me. He sounded desperate, saying he had lost his job and was on the verge of losing his apartment. He begged me for help, promising this time things would be different. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. When we met, David seemed genuinely distraught. He had lost a significant amount of weight and looked like he hadn't slept in days. He explained that he had been laid off due to company downsizing and that he had no one else to turn to. He even showed me eviction notices as proof of his dire situation. Seeing my brother like that broke my heart, and despite everything that had happened, I couldn't turn him away. I decided to help him out, but with strict conditions. I gave him enough money to cover his rent for the next 2 months and set up a payment plan for him to pay me back. I also helped him update his resume and apply for jobs. David seemed grateful and assured me he was serious about getting back on his feet and repaying me. Not long after, my parents reached out. My father had been hospitalized due to complications from his health issues, and they were struggling to cover the medical bills. They pleaded with me, saying they had exhausted all other options. My initial reaction was one of skepticism, given their previous dishonesty, but the thought of my father suffering pushed me to reconsider. I helped them pay the medical bills, but I insisted on seeing the bills myself and making the payments directly to the hospital. My parents reluctantly agreed, and I felt a bit more secure knowing exactly where the money was going. They thanked me profusely and promised they would find a way to repay me once things settled down. A couple of weeks later, my sister Emily 36F called. She was in tears, saying her business was failing, and she was at risk of losing her home. She blamed herself for not asking for my advice earlier and begged for one last loan to keep her afloat. I felt a pang of guilt for having cut her off so abruptly before, and once again, I found myself agreeing to help. I gave her enough to cover her mortgage for the next 3 months and offered to help her develop a business plan to improve her situation. I thought I was being smarter this time around by setting clear conditions and keeping track of where the money was going. However, it didn't take long for things to fall apart again. David stopped making payments on the loan and started avoiding my calls. When I finally managed to confront him, he had a slew of excuses, each less believable than the last. My parents, despite promising to repay me, began hinting at more financial troubles. Emily's business failed despite my efforts, and she was back asking for more money. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Despite all my precautions and conditions, I had allowed myself to be manipulated again. I felt like a fool. I had wanted to believe that my family would change, that they would finally take responsibility, but they hadn't. They had used my compassion against me, and I had fallen for it once more. So here I am, back at square one. I've come to realize that no matter how much I want to help my family, they will continue to take advantage of me as long as I allow it. It's a hard pill to swallow, but I need to learn from my mistakes. I'm not sure what my next steps will be. Part of me wants to cut them off completely, but another part still hopes they can change. Maybe I need to find a balance, a way to protect myself while still offering support when it's genuinely needed. Or maybe I need to finally accept that some people will never change, no matter how much you want them to. Thanks for listening, Reddit. If anyone has any advice or has been through something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts.